Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of 45 Minutes of Noise as part of the Noise Podcast Network and sponsored or helped brought to you by the Thirst Murderers that are at Liquid Death. I'm once again joined by Noise CEO Jack Holloway. Jack, how are you, sir?
Significantly less introduction than the first time we did this. I see that. I see what would happen if this was kind of a regular occurrence.
Absolutely, you're a regular part of the process now, so we don't need the WrestleMania style introduction for you every single time. Jack,
I
I
miss it.
bought
I
a I
do
bought a
miss it.
rake today, Jack.
Hmm?
I bought a rake today
Why did you do that, Sam?
because I'm in the stage of adulthood where I'm trying to fix my garden. So I bought a rake and I've ordered some 4-in-1 lawn grower stuff, and I'm going to do that and rake it over so it's even and improve the standard of the grass. That's the age that we're at. I was in B&M today looking at gardening supplies. Um,
Bloody hell!
yeah, maybe I might have been off work for too long. I'm starting to
I
worry
was
about
about to say the
what
summer's getting
redundancy
to
would do
you.
to me long term. It's terrifying to think about because I've been off work for 4 weeks and I'm like, you know, so ornaments, where we at? Do you know what I mean? Like that's the scale of thing that we're in. I was having a pleasant conversation with this older lady in B&M about the prices of gardening equipment online compared to the one in B&M. Just had a great day.
Wow! Wow! Wow!
Yeah, yeah. That's where we're going. So now I have a rake, so I'm just lead off
I
with
mean,
that.
you've. I had no idea that was coming. I don't really know what to say.
Yeah, on the introductory podcast bingo card, gardening supplies was pretty far down on the in the draft order. How are you anyway? How are things going with the busiest man on the planet?
Yeah, all right. Well, I mean, we should say that you and I got to spend some time together. That was good.
Yeah.
Uh,
So how did we spend 4 days together, Jack? Did we go out and go get an experience together? Did we go and find some cool bars and restaurants? Did we do productive things? Did we plan for the future? Did we discuss our careers and all that type of stuff? What did we do?
feel like some of that was interspersed, but there was sort of a general theme, and I would say that general theme was you and I watching an embarrassing amount of Star Wars. I don't want to say the amount of hours, but if anyone wants to know the Star Wars films and series that we watched and how we watched them, you can DM me and I will embarrassingly tell you. But yeah, I mean,
I'll
I
release segments of the notes on the Twitter account. We can see if we can attach them to the Noise podcast.
um,
Um,
I don't know about you, Sam, but I went
hmm.
for a jog yesterday. We spent too much time indoors, and it forced me to feel like I needed to sort of, I don't know, run away from my demons, or I don't know, I don't know what happened, but I went and had a half an hour jog. I'm very unfit as well, and that's not a normal occurrence for me.
Yeah,
Um,
I completely
that
understand.
happened. That was the thing that happened.
Yeah, I spent a large portion of my evening yesterday sat outside staring at the sky. Just with no
Honestly, it was wild.
with no
I will
schedule
say,
with no
I
schedule in
will
mind.
say, with two more things. First thing to round this off, if anyone's considering doing a 3 day, let's call it a 3 day Star Wars binge, day three is difficult. Okay, day three is going to start to really get on top of you. We did
Mm.
we did do some stuff in between. We saw some friends. It was really cool. I also went out and did some additional socializing. And just a quick mention that I went and saw Holding Absence play Chepstow Castle on Saturday, which was a magnificent, beautiful, an amazing show. I've never been there before. Really, like I've never thought it was about 1,200 cap, I think, and it felt so intimate. It was wild. They had some brilliant supports. They had Casey, who are another amazing Welsh band, Caskets, who are a brilliant band from Leeds, I think, and Glass Heart, who are another local Welsh band. All of which it felt very much like a mates fest for anyone in the kind of South Wales music scene, and it felt like a huge success. It felt like there's so much worth and talent and amazing stuff coming out of Wales, and it was a good moment to mark that. It was lovely. So yeah, that was awesome. I did that, then went
Yeah,
back to Star Wars.
it sort of broke up the weekend nicely. I just parlayed watching Star Wars with also watching other things during the evening. Just sort of doubled down. I'll have Star Wars on the big screen, but then I'll also have an NFL draft going on the little screen. We'll also having open a laptop with a baseball game on for some reason. I really just disrespecting my retinas right now. Really just going hard on the self-abuse. But there are other shows coming up, aren't there, Jack? Talk to us about Noise at Arctangent Festival.
Yeah, another plug. This episode comes out on Tuesday, the 13th. And I don't know why I'm saying it like that because we're recording it here. It's just because in my head I'm saying it. So you've sat here right now. You've got 3 days to Arctangent. You might be going out tomorrow, so listen to this on your way. But the Noise podcast in general, not 45 minutes of noise, but the Noise podcast will be performing. That doesn't feel right. They'll be live at Arctangent Festival. They're in the Elephant in the Barroom stage at 9 o'clock on Friday, just before Two Promoters One Pod, which is a massive podcast that's just gone like that. And they're absolutely
That's
amazing.
9
So
a.m., isn't it, Jack? Not 9 p.m., just to clarify.
9 a.m. Yeah, we're not clashing with the headliners. You'll be happy to know, because we know that that would obviously take quite a portion of the
Yeah.
headlining crowd away from,
Headlining today,
you know,
two blokes having a conversation.
the ever amazing Adam Blelly and Will Marshall will be heading that up. They've got some guests, which I wasn't able to announce last time. So we've got two of the lads from El Muno. I can't remember who we've got now.
Love El Muno.
We've definitely got Zach. Oh, Zach and Jamie, I think, agreed to do it. So we've got Zach and Jamie from El Muno, and then we have Michelle from Iris. And they're going to be on stage. They're going to be answering some questions. They're going to be doing some fun stuff. There may or may not be a cape involved. Don't know how we're going to manage that. But they gave the cape back to us at Noise Fest. It's time to do something else. The joke continues. Anyway, we're super stoked. We will have some merchandise there. We've got our green death metal hoodies and our pink death metal t-shirts. And they'll be on sale all weekend as of tomorrow, as of Wednesday. You're feeling generous, sort us out because we need all the help that we can get. And if Adam and Will turn around and say they want their petrol paid, that's going to be awkward at the moment. So buy a hoodie or buy a t-shirt or buy both. Any support's hugely appreciated. But more importantly, come and watch us on the Friday. I'll be there. There's going to be a ton of us from Noise. I think there's 6 or 7 of us from Noise there. Super excited. Like, I can't wait. I've never been to Arctangent before either. So I'm just going to be mulling about. Please say hi.
Alternatively, if you see two podcast hosts beleagueredly walking home, please help them get there. Or buy a hoodie
Yes.
to allow them to get into a car. That would just be great for everyone. Quick shout to that merch, though, by the way. The death metal logo is wicked. So please.
Buy it all, please.
Yeah,
Buy it
yeah.
all and I'll do something else that's cool.
That's a bribe or a threat.
Murder
Little bit of
my
both.
first, bitch.
Right, I think it's time for us to actually move on to the main concept for today. So, got 2 album reviews, as you can guess from the title. We're going to be talking about Zeal and Ardor and another band later on called Rising Insane. But before we get to that, we are going to discuss some news items. And since the last time we did a proper podcast a few weeks ago, the Gojira Olympics appearance has sort of done the rounds, but also it's the impact of that performance permeating through sort of the zeitgeist on social media and all that type of stuff has really sort of brought the band into focus. It gives me a really good spot for Gojira career-wise. Jack, before we talk about this a little bit, just a quick news article for those who are just tuning in. As reported by Loudwire, not LimeWire, that's a very early 2000s reference.
I remember LimeWire.
Yeah, I do. I don't think they're reporting any news anytime soon, unless that news is that your computer has 57 viruses and 56 of them are terminal. But prior to the Olympics, Gojira was sitting at 1.65 monthly listeners on streaming platforms. And
is that
following the band's
1.65 people or 1.65 million people?
Yeah, it's actually one person and the headless French lady sat next to him, the Mary Antoinette actor. She was the
Well
person
recovered.
listening. Thank you. Thank you. You threw me for a loop there, tried to get away with it. I didn't spot. But after the band's performance as it stands right now, Gojira have climbed up to a staggering 2.73 million monthly
Oh
listeners.
shit.
Yeah, so maybe they've added the hair to the lady and sort of added that extra that 0.08. But in terms of statistics, monthly listeners have actually grown by nearly 50%. For an extreme metal band like Gojira, this is obviously a fairly unprecedented moment in their career. Jack, my question to you is twofold. Is this a big moment for Gojira long term? And also, is this a sign that maybe we are opening the door to more extreme metal acts performing at these kind of social events moving down the road?
Good question. I mean, my personal thoughts on it were very much. It's funny, isn't it? The moment you don't have to be a huge fan of a metal band to really get behind them. The moment that you see it will be divisive, won't it? You'll see metal fans will either absolutely love it or they'll absolutely hate it, and there's no in between because either you get the gatekeeper metalers or you get the guys that are just so super stoked to have some more people listen to metal because it's what we try and do every time we get an aux cable in our hand. And for me personally, I watched it and then I just instantly wanted to listen to Gojira. I just thought it was the coolest shit ever. And I'm a metal fan, loose, but metal fan nonetheless.
Metal
And
adjacent.
I've never been a big Gojira fan, but I listened to two albums back to back just off the back of that performance, and it shows, doesn't it? I mean, clearly there is a number of people that have gone and done that after that performance, and the actual performance itself was phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. Like they absolutely smashed it. And I think Gojira are one of those bands that are quite highly lauded, and they seem less divisive. There seems like it's quite a clear cut opinion that lots of people just think Gojira is sick. But like done. There
Yeah.
seems very little argument about it. So in terms of do I think that we're open? What was the first question? Was it that do I think that metal's got a
Is this going to
place
like
in?
impact them long term as a band? And then the second question was about metal as a whole at these kind of events.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think for Gojira, is it gonna benefit them a huge amount? I mean, it's one of their moments. It's gonna be one of their milestones. It's gonna be one of those big things that lots of people remember for a lot of times. If that gets them more listeners and more money to do more albums, then fuck yeah. But I mean, they're one of those bands that are calculated and take time in the studio and I don't think it's probably going to affect them a huge amount. They're like an up and coming band. They're headlining arenas, mate. But I think if maybe Coppin needed the thing that that what is that band teetering on headline status? I mean, there's no question about it now. Really, it's probably quite an affirming moment for them. I think. So I think it's going to do in some way um, do them some real good in that sense. In terms of metal entering the kind of will we see it more in the Olympics? I mean, it was a very avant-garde style creator artist that put this together, and France had a very clear narrative that they wanted to portray for this, and it's probably done them a huge amount of favors because it's been one of the most controversial Olympics, full stop, in a considerable amount of time, at
Yeah.
least.
Yeah.
Performances being part of that. But I mean, I'm all for it. I mean, in general, the only thing I think is that between maybe Eurovision and between the sort of style that pop music is generally shifting into, I think there's less of a gap between extreme metal being able to break into something because there's a lot. You look at themes in pop music and the way pop music is written. It's dark and it's kind of changed a huge amount, and it's why I think it's paved the way for the likes of Bring Me being the main example that they can get in on that. Now I know how obviously they're laced with pop hooks, melodies, and all those sorts of things, but they wouldn't have found themselves in that sort of mainstream a huge amount of time ago. Um, and I guess the point I'm making is there just feels like a general air of acceptance more so for metal. Um, you pop stars are pop stars, ugh, but you know what I mean, are working with metal bands. And Megan Thee Stallion did a collab with Spirit Box. Do you know what I mean? Like there's just you see these things cropping up far more regularly. Um, and I think that's probably done some way in making us more accepting, or making this artist probably think, yeah, I can get away with this extreme metal band on at the Olympics. So I think we'd probably see more of it. I'd love to if we continue going in the direction that we do. I've rambled, but I mean, I think there's a lot that contributes to it, and I think in general we could see more of it, and I'm a big fan of that, obviously.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting sign of the times that we're the amount of bands that can headline that kind of event or can be involved in that kind of televised um social sort of moment can sort of be expanded. I mean, like the next Olympics are in Los Angeles. I can imagine that they're not short of a few artists that will be able to fit the bill there, and I don't imagine they'll need to dip into anything particularly obscure. I mean, they had Tom Cruise sort of cycling down for the handover part of the festival. I imagine if they wanted to, they would just have like Beyonce or something. But it was an interesting little note because obviously it's France and Gojira are probably their biggest, at least their biggest extreme um, sort of export. If it was in Germany, maybe you'd see Ramstein. If it was Brazil, maybe they'd risk Sepultura or something like that. But I guess it kind of depends on the particular narrative associated with the country. And then you look at France with its history of social upheaval, with its left-leaning histories and liberal arts background. Of all the countries really to push forward the envelope, I guess it would be France would be near the top of those ones, unless you did it in something like Sweden or Norway, a country with like real extreme metal roots as part of its culture. But I think what it shows is that even among an audience that you would never have picked as metal fans, the ubiquitous quality of the Olympics is something that should be celebrated. Is that not only do people watch this performance from Gojira and just not see it beyond a novelty, if the Gojira have actually made fans as a result of this, if hundreds of thousands of people actually watch the Olympics opening ceremony, and I can't imagine there's a pretty big Venn diagram of the people that watch the Olympics opening ceremony and listen to extreme metal. I imagine the actual crossover is quite small. I thought it'd be like me and seven other people. So it's quite pleasing to hear that this kind of event can have that impact. And I agree with you. If it sort of starts as like a tipping point for Gojira, um, to then move into a different stratosphere, and that's incredibly positive. I mean, it's been 4 years since Fortitude came out in 2020. Me and Kris reviewed that during the pandemic. And
Remember?
they appear to release an album every 4 years. So we'll see the fruits of this moment impact on any potential album release either at the end of 2024 or more likely the start of 2025, and we'll see this sort of impact that. Alternatively, if Gojira actually released this as a single, um, with an actual with a full weight of a song associated with that opening 90 seconds, and that would be really interesting to see how well that does. But I think overall, it's an interesting sign of the times. I mean, with with an American city hosting the Olympics next year, why can't you have a rock band? Why can't you have like a Metallica or something like that be part of the ceremony? But again, I imagine they're going to lean more into the Hollywood, Los Angeles style stuff. So if it'd be anything, it'd be whatever the Olympic is in 2032, which I believe is Australia. I think it might be Brisbane. I can't remember. In which case, that'd be
Can't wait
great. That'd be
for
that'd be great because you can just get Alpha
yeah,
Wolf, no problem.
yeah. I was about to say Parkway Drive. What? Like,
Absolutely.
don't tell me that wouldn't be insane.
Well, the
They'll just
biggest
call it the
the biggest bands
Metalympics.
from yeah, absolutely. The biggest bands from Australia are metal ones, as far as I'm concerned. Um,
Yeah,
Kylie Minogue's going to be like, she can be like in her 60s or 70s by that point. Like, come on now.
she'll guest. She can guest on it
She
and
can
carry on.
guest. She can guest on it. Carry on. That'd be amazing with a bit of Kylie on that.
Imagine.
Bit of
Yeah.
Deathless song with
Mm.
Kylie Minogue rocking the melodies. Anyway,
Yo,
Moving on, just a quick one. Aerosmith retired. Are you upset? First and foremost, what are your Aerosmith experiences before I ask you a follow-up?
I wanted to. Am I upset? I wanted to do like I wanted to hit that note he hits in crying.
If you manage to hit that generally, even out of context, I'll be fairly impressed.
We would stop the podcast. I'd have to have a lie down for one, and
Mm.
then I
Between
wouldn't
that
be
and
able
your
to stop.
job, you'd have had such a busy, physically taxing 2 days.
Am I upset? No, not really. I like Aerosmith. I mean, it's time. I got respect for it.
Favorite
What's your
Aerosmith
favorite?
song?
Hmm. The one called is it? Is it called? I don't know if it's called
Sing for
that.
the Moment.
Is it called "Sing for the Moment" or is that what Eminem called it when he did his
No, that's the actual song's Dream On.
"Dream
Sing for
On"?
the
Okay.
Moment's the
Oh
Eminem one,
God,
yeah.
"Dream On." Piece of it.
Yeah.
Easy peasy.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's mine as well. That's mine as well.
I mean,
Um,
it's incredible.
yeah, massive band, humongously influential on bands like Guns N' Roses. A lot
Saw
of those late
I
80s
saw them
bands.
do that, and I saw them at the tail end of I think download 2013, 14,
It was been
14,
14 because 13 was the one we went to with
14. You were
Ramstein,
at
Maiden,
13,
Slipknot.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
right.
2014, amazing, still brilliant. I mean, we're talking 10 years ago, which is wild, but um, nice to have seen a couple of songs. Saw "Don't Want to Miss a Thing." Obviously, that was great.
Yeah, can't go wrong. Can't go wrong with that. So this brings us to sort of a question. You can take this in a positive or a negative direction. You're driving the car here, so I'm going to ask you if you can reverse one retirement decision in musical history. So that means a band that either is retired that you can bring back, or the more cynical version, a band that are still playing that you would just like to immediately retire and shove into the cupboard for the rest of recorded history, just like go to sleep, grandpa, pillow over the head. Um, which band would that be?
They have to be old, or can I just bin off one that I think shit?
They have to be old. They have to be nearing. They have to be at a point where there has to be a retirement decision. You can't just be like, I will retire young blood right now. Although that would be a great decision. But yeah, you're gonna have to be a band that's approaching
No, I wouldn't retire
retirement.
Youngblood because without Youngblood, we wouldn't have Bloodfest, and that would be a crying shame. But that does mean that I can't retire Fall in Reverse and do everyone a favor. That's fine. Um, it's obvious, but I mean, put Motley Crue out of their misery. Fuck's sake.
Yeah, Motley Crue are like the Candy's dog of music, just enough mice and men shooting the dog in the back of the head reference for you there. Of the music world, where it's like, aren't you dead
Just
yet?
limping
Like, there's
around.
what's
Yeah, you
going on
just feel
here?
sorry for it. You want to see it because it's still cute, but I mean, you don't want to hold it. Ugh,
Yeah, it
no, it's
smells funny.
disgusting. Yeah,
I imagine if you hug Vince Neil now, that's a weird smell.
things would fall off.
Yeah, things would fall things would fall off.
I
Limbs,
don't know what
lips,
crust.
dignity. Yeah, there'd be flakes, in various orifices, wouldn't there?
Oh,
Glitter.
oh God,
Because I'm
I'm
not
getting
convinced he could sing in 1983, let alone now. Like, do you know what I mean? Like I've seen videos where, like, bless his heart, like keep going out there, whatever. But he sounds out of breath at like the beginning of songs. We shouldn't be getting to Winded Wildebeest at like track three. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like opening verses to like songs you've been singing for 40 years. Motley Crue's a good shout. Motley Crue's a good
It's
shout.
fine. Who you doing? Who you sending off? Or
Uh,
who you bringing back?
hmm. If this was a year ago, Ozzy Osbourne is the easiest decision ever because it just got really
Hmm.
weird near the end. But just to stay on the glam metal exits, can we just never have a Def Leppard show ever again? Um,
Sure,
that there's just no need. There's just no
I'll
need for
back you.
that. No need for that. Kiss is another one where at, the, at
Yeah, but
this
they'll
at,
just come back.
at this point, but the big one, Jack, for me
Sneak
is
attack.
The big one is AC/DC. I have seen clips.
Oh,
I have seen clips
done.
and I've heard, and it is over. It's already over essentially in its reality anyway. It's Brian Johnson who's deaf, by the way. Angus Young, who is a 75, 76-year-old man in a school uniform. They're doing a 20-minute guitar solo so Brian Johnson can catch his breath. Malcolm Young is dead. There's like two or three hired hands, including Malcolm Young's, I think it's brother, or like a member of the Young family, just gives it the guise of an original lineup. And they kind of formally retired already with this power up thing. And it's just like, man, Back in Black's gonna keep you guys in beer and fags just for the rest of your life. Just just let it go. Let it go. There's no need to be charging people 200 quid a ticket to hear Angus Young's slowing fingers like fiddle around for those about to rock and that type of stuff. And they're slowing it down. AC/DC are
I've
playing
got
slower.
slowing fingers. Oh God! Between that and Neil's crust, I'm feeling well. I'm like starting to feel like we shouldn't air this podcast.
Neil's crust and
We've
slowing
said so many
fingers
things.
is just not great. Just not great. But yeah, so I
Feels
th
so icky.
those those are the bands for me, I think. And
Fair.
that's a grand shame. That's a grand shame, really, because
Cancel us. You said it.
I
That's who we're
mean,
getting rid of.
if you're listening to this and you went to
Is what
see
it
an
is.
AC/DC show or a Def Leppard show or a Motley Crue show in the last year and a half and you had a great time, then let us know and prove us wrong. But based on the YouTube clips and some of the videos
Please.
and some of the internet stuff and some of the social media content, no, you didn't. Just no, you didn't. And a lot of it is like spending 200 quid and then convincing yourself that you had a good time because you spent 200 quid. Like when you buy a meal and you get the fries you didn't need, and then half of them are left over, and you say to your partner, "They were nice though, weren't they? The fries, they were £12, but they were really good, weren't they?" And you walk away knowing you've wasted the money, but you play that little game with yourself to feel better. That's what this is, you know. I'm sorry it didn't come with a
It
time
took
machine to take you back to 1979, but it didn't, and we live in the real world.
it took 2 episodes of Sam at the helm to just really bring Mr. Cynical out. Think about what the fucking mop up Chris is gonna have to do now.
He was hiding behind a
Let
curtain
you
like the
do this.
Phantom of the Opera, and then I just hit a C note. He just appeared. Your mistake is just letting me have a microphone. Like just, dude, come on. But
But
like, no,
well, we bought you
it's
that
just,
microphone.
yeah,
Crazy.
yeah. I've been funded. But like, no, like if they were good, I'd say they were good. Like, I see Metallica shows, and Lars Ulrich isn't as good as he used to be, but overall, Metallica is still pretty good. And the minute they're not, I will be saying
Hey, hold that.
I'll be saying on podcasts, it's time, gentlemen. But we're not at that point just yet, and we are at it with some other bands. We just are. And these are some of them. But anyway, let's talk about some of our albums today. We're gonna start with the headliner.
Let's talk about good
Um,
stuff.
yeah, yeah, legitimately. We're gonna review the new Zeal Ardor record, Jack. It's called Greif. It's their fourth studio album. Greif is misspelled, so I'm hoping that's deliberate. Not by me, by the band. Me and Chris
I did double
reviewed.
check.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's their fourth album. Their third album, me and Chris reviewed in 2022, the self-titled one, Zeal and Ardor by Zeal and Ardor, just in case you weren't sure. And I thought that it was a brilliant record, and I thought that it was felt like their coming out party. But actually, I did a little bit of digging, and it turns out that I was one album late, as I often am. And their coming out party was actually 2018. Jack, I want to talk to you a little bit about Zeal and Ardor as a band generally before we actually sink in. I'm aware of the time, but there's a couple of things that I want to just run past you. Um, I want to read this quote from a Guardian article in 2018, Jack, and just see what you think. 2018 Stranger Fruit was the cultural breakout. Quote, Zeal and Ardor offered unique merchandise deals in their 2018 shows, and fans could get free merchandise if they branded the band's logo on their skin. 8 people took up the offer, with Gagno, who's the lead vocalist, saying the intent was that no one would ever do it because that's the whole thing. You don't want this brand. If you do, you're just an idiot who is following, not thinking for yourself. If they want to underline my statement, that's fine with me. But 8 people is enough. If they don't get the symbolism, let's not encourage them. Imagine getting the brand of a band name on your skin, and then the lead singer of the band's like, "What'd you do that for? That is incredibly idiotic. You weren't supposed to do that." Is that just the worst feeling ever? Like, how is that? Imagine going on to explain that. Yeah, I got a Zeal and Ardor tattoo at a Zeal and Ardor show. Oh my God, how did the band react? Hated it, actually. Told me not to. Immediately discouraged. Just shaken disappointment.
I don't think there's another band that gets away with it quite like they do, with the sort of general ethos and what they're surrounding themselves with. And if I hadn't listened to this record or seen the notes that we've had for it, that wouldn't make sense to me. Like I wouldn't be able to get my head around it. If you haven't listened to a Zeal and Ardor record before, you're sitting here thinking pricks. But there's something about the way that they view the creating process that is just so incredibly unique and so just unapologetic. It doesn't and you can tell in this record, and it doesn't surprise me that they've done that, and it doesn't, they're just, yeah, they're cop out word authentic, I guess. But yeah.
Yeah, they're a particularly unique band. Just to come to this before we
Mm.
talk about the actual record. The band is influenced by artists such as, now check this out for a list, Jack. Mayhem, Burzum, Dark Throne, Wendy Carlos, Tom Waits, Golem, Portishead, Nag Fla, Iron Maiden, plus Deftones and Limp Bizkit. That is a variety. Not many people will put Dark Throne and Tom Waits in the same paragraph as collective influences. What do you like? I really like Decapitated and Bob Dylan. Those are my two favorite artists. Just a combo. So knowing that they're just this musical kaleidoscope, what's your personal experience with Zeal and Ardor? What was the first record you heard by them? Did you hear the self-titled one? Did you come in at the same time as me and Kris, or were you there a little earlier?
Yeah, I mean, I remember there being a real hype around that last record. And it, yeah, that was my first in was the self-titled. For those that have or haven't listened, it's kind of like I think it leans into the black metal side of, like, it's got that really sort of intense, extreme side to it. Um, but has a huge amount of melody and rock and roll and like a lot of riffs, and it's, yeah, it just was like nothing I've ever heard before or since. Um, and it was hard to escape, I think, between metal Twitter and between all the guys in Noise. There's a huge amount of hype around it, and I think people started to really realize the sort of band that they are and how they operate. I mean, it's all around the front man. It's all him. Is it Gagno? Did you say?
Yeah, yeah,
He is the absolute creative epicenter of all of it.
yeah. This is the first
Yeah,
album
so I came in
actually
at the
where
same
the
time. Yeah.
band has played instruments like as part of the
Yes, yeah, I
record.
found that really interesting. Yeah,
Usually he's just been like Prince, where he just writes and records everything apart from the drums. But this time he's actually like had a group, which is interesting.
let the band in. Yeah, you can tell. I think, and again, I think he refers to it as widening the palette.
Mm.
And I think you can absolutely hear that on this.
Yeah, I completely agree. I wish Caleb from Beartooth would do the same. Just get a different musician in, please. Let him help you out.
Let them
Uh,
in, Caleb.
let them in. Let them in. All these songs sound the same. I wonder why. Anyway, moving further on. Uh, I I like you got into the third record. I thought it was really, really interesting. And Like many thought experiments, I thought about it for a while and listened to it, and then it was sort of went back on a shelf and just sort of frittered away. This though, this feels different. This feels like, in comparison to their other records, this feels a much more um structured, more layered musical sort of vision. So before, where I was listening to Zeal Ardor, it kind of felt like they were like, here's the black metal bit, here's the blues bit, back to the black metal bit, back to the blues bit. Whereas this time it feels that it's so much more intertwined, to use your word from earlier, sort of like blended together. And it feels a much more natural concoction. 90 seconds into this, Jack, my jaw was on the floor. Bird, the Lion Man, and the Wild King, and To Fend You Off is just as jaw-dropping and gorgeous as an opening as I've heard on a record for ages. There's a real not contrived where you listen to metal songs and you're like, "Oh, I'm so dark and thoughtful. Don't you think I'm dark and thoughtful?" There's like a genuine depth here that isn't sort of invented. There's a real vulnerability and humanity with his voice that I just loved. The darkness and the riff stylings alongside it complemented it rather than sort of took it away. The chorus here was like, this could be an Alice in Chains song. It's got that kind of grit and that groove alongside. I thought the fills in between the powerful chorus lines were just fantastic. Running vocals, synths into double kick stuff. It was raw and structured at the same time. It was a real highlight for me. I was just blown away. What were your thoughts on those opening couple of tracks?
Yeah, I mean that opener is epic, and then it kicks into what is it? Fend You Off. It's got that recurring sort of instrumentation. So they're not shy to a build up and that kind of like slow build, and having read the press notes and knowing that there's a band that were kind of doing that, there was elements of it that you just felt like some of this they probably just jammed up in the practice room and then were like, yeah, that's sick, let's keep that. Like, it must be such a talented group of people, and it feels, you're absolutely right, it feels, I think in general the record feels like a natural progression, I think. And it did, but also doesn't necessarily feel like a departure from that sound. It just feels like they've just gone, let's blow the lid off it and see what we can do creatively. And yeah, there was elements of like math rock at times. There was some really like, you just, and the sections move on. Now sometimes for me that's super jarring. Like, I find it like, wait, I was just getting used to that bit, and give me more of that bit. I don't want to go on to the next bit yet, but there's something somehow in even in all of the sort of chopped up sections and the way they put it together, it still feels cohesive throughout. And I felt that on, I think it's the second track, Kilo Nova, and it just had these
Yeah.
huge math rock vibes. And I was like, I just sat there like, I shouldn't be enjoying this on paper, and I'm not really understanding why I'm loving it, but I love it. And sometimes I feel like I'm listening to Creed, and the next moment I feel like I'm listening to Cradle of Filth. I'm like, oh God,
Yeah.
what is going on?
That
Because
is
it
that
just
is
shouldn't work, but it
yeah,
just,
that is all Ganyo. He's as versatile
yeah.
as a vocalist as I've ever heard.
Oh, his vocals, his vocals are
Yeah,
unbelievable.
there are moments on this. There's a moment on Are You the Only One Now where I just like to write down bands as I'm listening, just the things that remind me of. And 2 minutes earlier, I was like Aerosmith, cool, on the previous track. And then on Are You the Only One Now, I was like Svalbard. Like,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
should be able to go from one to the other in three and a
yeah.
half minutes, man. Like that's a twig jarring. That's like tornado style, just sort of sweeping your potato to a completely different world entirely. Um, I I think this is just excellent. Just going sort of through it. Go Home, My Friend, and Clawing Out. It's like the blues mixed with tone and chugging, and there's a dark
So
frenetic
much,
element on Clawing Out. Vocal
so
reminiscent of
much
Sepultura in
soul.
that middle section. Yeah, there really is. That's the thing.
Huge.
Is alongside metal styles. And here's with me, like, I feel that metal's greatest compliment is also its greatest weakness, in the sense that a lot of metal at its most impressive is also relatively soulless, in the sense that you listen to metal and it's at its best, or at least its most successful, I guess, or its most impactful. There's like a sheen and a perfection to how difficult the difficult stuff that they're putting together. That's just mind blowing. But sometimes that's achieved at the loss of like a feeling of real rawness and soul and blues and sort of real melancholy. And what I think is great about Zeal and Ardor is Ganyo's voice provides a touch of humanity inside this like machine like rock and metal band. And I think that juxtaposition is just really, really lovely. Like you listen to Are You the Only One now, it's just beautiful. You listen to Disease, which could be like an American band's cover of an Arctic Monkeys tune with like a bluesy little American swagger with his cadence. Do you remember? I should have Googled this beforehand. Do you remember the band Cage the Elephant?
Yeah, God, yeah.
They
Wow.
released that big single
They were
about
great.
Trouble, and it had that
Yeah. Yeah,
money
yeah,
doesn't
yeah.
grow on trees lyric. I think that was the tune. I was like listening to that, and I was like, oh my, like listen to this record, and I was thinking of like, this sounds like them. This sounds like this little bluesy, like sort of indie band. I listened to 369, the interlude. It sounds a bit like Fever 333. Um, there's just so much here. Um, from a like talk about palette widening, it's sort of palette stretching more than anything. It's like this combination of traditional rock and blues, and then metal and soul and a little bit of gospel, all sort of matched in together. And his voice and his personality and his lyricisms are the glue that sort of ties all this stuff together. Um, Oftentimes I find myself over the last couple of years, especially listening to a record and it sets out a blueprint and then it sort of sticks to that blueprint for the next 11 tracks. And you can sort of, after track six, you can sort of really, write the rest of the review based on sort of muscle memory or pattern recognition. And this isn't like that. I feel that every song has its own particular personality and structure and cadence. I feel that every song here has its own value to the record. And it's really refreshing for me to hear a record where it's all underlying the same theme and approach, but yet there are so many different elements and interpretations of that. When I got to like To My Ilk, the final track, with the finger picking and the quietness, the beautiful descending chords, I was just like, this has just scratched the final itch for me because I've been given everything else. From a metal, rock, blues, soul, all these other genres, I've hit everything, and I just haven't had this final little crescendo emotive piece, and it sort of ties it all together. I love this. I love this. This is probably my album of the year so far.
Wow. Can't argue it. I mean, it's wild, isn't it? And we've already mentioned so many so many things so many things that we're hearing as we go through it. And usually, when you start drawing out a huge amount of influences for a band and saying they've been influenced by this, and this, you kind of feel like, well, what is it? Because they're none of if you can say, oh, they feel like they're a bit architects, and then you're kind of like, but I have architects, so that's why would I want this thing? That's not what we're saying here at all. What we're saying is you hear so much in this that it almost feels like it just includes everything. I've written down everything from Slipknot to King 810 to I got like he's got a Corey Taylor style like range. I wrote about Royal Blood because they've got some of those out and out rock bangers with the big drums and gang vocals. And I need more listens. But I loved it. I mean, I absolutely loved it. It's yet another amazing album for them. They're going to be such a musician's band. They're going to be such a big influence. I think they've already taken creativity and have set the bar for what bands want to strive towards and do, or you'll just look at and give up, either or. And I respect both of those decisions after you look at this. Phenomenal. I mean, and they don't care either, which is the only other part I will say. I mean, I love the record, but like they're not it's almost like they're a band not trying to kind of do this for any kind of success, but they're getting it anyway. To My Ilk was the first single off this record. Now, if you're a new listener going in, like, what? Like that's
Mhm.
they
Imagine
just
listening to To
they
My Ilk,
just
thinking
do
it's
what
a
they
bit of
want.
you, and then putting on the rest of the record.
Go on, what is it? Is it crawling out? Clawing out? Fuck, you'd be like, what the hell's going on? You know, it's crazy, but like it works. It
Mm.
works, and it works for them. And I cannot even begin to imagine what their live experience is like. Like that must be mind blowing. Because I feel like that listening to the record, I feel like it's challenging and amazing and like nothing else I've heard before. Phenomenal record. Phenomenal record. I could go on about it for days.
Yeah, I completely agree. It was a joy to listen to. Joy to listen to. Okay, let's move on to the next record, the final record we're going to be talking today. It is from Rising Insane via Long Branch Records. It's out on August the 23rd. It's their fourth studio record. And Jack, this was labeled with for fans of Bring Me the Horizon, Bad Omens, and Architects. Now, of all the people to be talking to about an album that lists those, there are few people who'd be more suited to this. The album's called Wildfires, by the way. I forgot to mention that at the start. And you love those three bands with a burning fire. So, in theory, this should be not just a bit of you. This should be you entirely wrapped up and put on a Horlicks link. So is this all for you? Did this strike a chord as much as the PR notes seem to imply that it would?
Yeah, you're right. It's absolutely for me, and I'm listening to it, and I'm sat and I'm thinking, every so often, yeah, that's that face, dude. That's a bit of me. That um, I don't know whether I don't am I overexposed to this genre of music, and it takes something really special to kind of you know really grab my attention because what was once a pond is now a lake, and that lake is quite big. Um, which I feel like is more of a me thing because I've been doing review stuff since for the last decade, and
And
I've
you can't
listened to
swim.
a lot of bands. Yeah, I mean it's similar in the way that we talked 2 weeks ago, didn't we, about the Siamese record, and there are absolutely moments in it that I'm like, yeah, that's great. But I think this for me feels like there's a few singles that I would take and put on a playlist and wouldn't necessarily go back to the album as a whole um, regularly, but I also wouldn't be offended by it.
Fair enough. This feels to me like when your parents take you shoe shopping when you're 12 and they're like, you like trainers with stripes on? These pair of trainers have stripes on. So should we just get those because they're 12 quid? And you're like, I like Adidas. I don't like trainers with stripes on. I like Adidas trainers. And this feels like a little bit like that, where it's like, you like architects. These do some of the things that architects do. Don't you want this as much as architects? You're like, yeah, well, I still gonna put on an architect's record, aren't I? Though? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, this is really good, but like, this will tick some boxes. This will do for right now. Like, yeah, I'll take Pepsi, but when I'm in the supermarket, we're buying Coke. You know what I mean? Like, and this feels a little bit like that to me, where it hits the blueprint, it hits all the right choruses, all the right stuff, but it feels like a band that's been like designed by a game producer who's making like a FIFA game or something, and they're like, we've got modern metal on here, and it's like this, and it's just like a version of modern metal. This is like what a PR executive thinks Architect sounds like. Oh, to be fair, listen to the last two Architects records, it is kind of what they sound like, but generally speaking, this is yeah, it's good. It touches all the right boxes, but at its base, it feels like a bit of an imitation. Now, let's actually look at the track by track. I did enjoy this though. I will say.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
th like
I feel like I've come across as quite negative as well. I need to positive out your cynicism, but uh, no, I really enjoyed this record. Like I should have opened with that. Really, it's just it's so hard to break your. And I mean, I'm not. This review isn't going to be the thing that breaks out Rising Insane. They're doing really well.
Yeah, 20
And
million
they're a
streams.
yeah, they're a band that have done a lot of covers that I've liked in the past. Your kind of, pop goes punk style um covers, and those are really good. And yeah, this is a band that have blown up through those covers and are now doing their own thing. And there's moments in this that are absolutely brilliant. Um,
Yeah.
just as an album, it's just it's nothing groundbreaking, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, this feels a little just a bit low, a little bit low calorie. But if we go through the record, like Rain's a good song, great chorus,
Banger.
great guitar at the end. Lighthouse is brilliant, bit of depth, well built, well written song, well constructed. Bet on Me could be a Wage War song tomorrow. Would be one of the best Wage War songs they've written in the last 5 years, as far as I'm concerned. Like immediately. Warning, it's a Four to the Floor song. Chad Kroger could sing over the top of that, and it would be a great Nickelback song really easily. Um, Carousel, not bad at all. Burn, the single, feels a bit repetitive at this point, but the breakdown at the end is terrific. I think The Door is my favorite because it has something else. It's powerful and slow, really explodes at the end, and the strings chord combination really, really works for me. And Wildfires, the title track, is the song that sounds the most like peak Architects because it's got that thrashy metalcore sliding transcending sort of riffs where it could be like a Silosis record, and it's like a legit metalcore at the end, very Architects. It's cool, it's powerful, and it caps off a good album. But anytime I'm craving something like this, I'm gonna put on Bring Me Architects While She Sleeps, and those kind of bands first before I get to this. But that doesn't mean to say that these aren't a really good band putting together a really good album. And if your Bad Omens going on a massive tour in the next few months, these would be especially if they're German and you're doing like a leg in that country or in that region. Germany, massive metal fans over there as well. Then these would be just a terrific addition to that tour. Um, do I think it's gonna like be groundbreaking? No, I don't. Do I think it's gonna like change the genre that it's just entered? I do not. Do I think that the band are trying to do that either though? No. So why should I beat them over the head for not releasing a legacy defining record when who cares if that's actually what they're trying to do to begin with? They're a good band, they've produced a good album. It is good. If you like the bands that we've just talked about, you will definitely enjoy this. If you're 21 and you're discovering metalcore and you're doing that thing that all metal fans get into, and you find the first bands that you like, and then you find in those secondary tier bands that are influenced by or adjacent to the bands that you first get in. Like if you like Linkin Park, then eventually you lead to Slipknot, and then from Slipknot you go to Mastodon or whatever it might be, and you just sort of Lamb of God, whatever, and you're just sort of following it through. These could actually be the second branch of bands that you get into after you've listened to the last Bad Omens record that you really like, or you've listened to Post-Human by Bring Me, or anything like that, or like I said, any of the last couple of Wage War records, or August Burns Red, or any of those kind of metalcore bands that you're like, actually, I could do a bit more of this. This would be a band that'd be right in your street, and I think this is a good record from a good band. I think they're going to do good things, and I am perfectly, perfectly happy with the production. I was a little bit, like you say, burnt out a little bit by the end. But you're right, that could just as easily be the curse of the reviewer, the critic's curse kind of thing, where talk about oversaturation, we are deliberately exposed to that kind of stuff. But if this catches you at the right time, you hear this in a bar or a rock club, or you stroll past them at a festival, or they're supporting a band you really like and you got there an hour early, you're not having a bad time with this at all. And I think that's what they're intending to do. And by that moniker and by that assessment focus, I guess, they've absolutely achieved what they've set out to do.
Yeah, totally agree. It'll be no surprise to you that they've recently toured with, I believe, of Mice and Men.
Yeah, makes all the sense in
Um,
the world. Yep,
and
definitely. Yeah,
and
if you like
I
Mice and
think in
Men, you should love
general,
these. 100%.
yeah, 100%. Especially if you like the sort of where Mice and Men have got to now, where they've got into that comfortable level of making really solid metal records. Yeah, I was hearing a load of Alexis on Fire, and that way that he's got huge vocal dexterity, and that was super impressive in this, and I think he really showed it off. it's hugely produced. It has an intention, and you're right. When it got to the door, that was one of my favorites on the record as well because it strips it all back. It really lets him take center, and you know, I think do some more of that. Be creative with it. Let more of that in. I'm all about it because it still held some of those elements of your bad omens and your architects and your bring me and but it did so in a way that felt like okay, I feel like I'm listening to Rising Insane now, and that felt really good. I felt I mean one mention that I should say is you talked about Burn. That is the most shameless blef I have ever heard in a breakdown. It was like, guys, we got to get a blech in there, and so they put it in. But I loved it, and it's great. They're really clearly proud of the sort of genre they sit in, the way the way that they do music. The only thing I will say, or I will add, because you have summed it up brilliantly, is I felt like Wildfires on the end was such a weird stylistic choice in the
Yeah,
album listing.
yeah.
I was like, the door finished, and I was like, do you know what? That was a fucking really solid record. And right at the end, they've done that thing that bands, I guess, to a degree in their infancy do, where they show you a song somewhere towards the latter half, and you're like, take that, put that into the next record, and then we're fucking talking. And then another song came on, and I was like, oh, Wildfires is sick, but it felt proper out of left field and super weirdly placed in the album. I just felt like an add-on. I felt like I was listening to a deluxe version, and Wildfires was the new song they just put on the end of it. It was weird, but who knows? Who am I to say for all my stuff? But especially, that last song normally for on an album is your one that slows it down a little, that takes a little bit of a turn, and yeah, very odd, but
Yeah, I agree with
loved
that.
it on the whole. Check it out, and I absolutely agree with you. Me, 10 years ago, this is my favorite band, without a shadow of a doubt. Like I'm listening to this, and I'm like, it's the most fucking amazing thing I've ever heard. And if you're a younger music fan, metal fan, you fucking love this.
Basically, if you're
Fucking
not
love it.
beleaguered by the genre like me and Jack have become over the last decade, you're gonna have a wonderful time. You're gonna have a wonderful time
That's
until
an us problem.
it
That is an
is.
us problem.
It is actually. It is actually. Um, yeah, okay. Fair play. So that's the podcast. That's Rising Insane. That's Zeal and Ardor. That's Gojira. That's Aerosmith. That's Lawn Equipment. That's
What
kind of
more could
covered
you want from a
all the
podcast?
all the bases have been covered, and a few that I didn't even realize were available for covering have been covered today. So, Jack, before we let you go, anything you want to plug?
Yeah, just a reminder about Arctangent. Do come along. I'm super excited for it. It's this week. It's on Friday, Elephant in the Barroom stage, 9 a.m., just before Two Promoters One Pod. If you're going to go down and see Two Promoters One Pod at 10 a.m., then you're already up. So get some breakfast and go and see us at 9 a.m., and then you'll feel ready. Plus, it's not like a band, like you've got to wait 10 minutes for changeover. So we finish at 10 to 10, and then they're on at 10 o'clock. So you're going to be getting there early anyway, and that tent's going to be packed for them. So come down slightly earlier, please. I feel like I'm plugging it because now I've laid it on too thick now. No one's going to turn up. But predominantly, what I want you to do, if you're not there, is I expect that you're in the merch tent and you're buying our hoodies and our t-shirts. So it's one or the other,
Yeah,
right?
pick one. Pick one. Listen to the podcast or buy a jumper. Like this isn't this isn't
Thing is that
anything else.
the merch tent is also so close to the stage that you could probably nip off and go and get something before Two Promoters starts. Do us a favor, guys, sell it out.
Yeah, so please follow us on Twitter at Noise Podcast. Please follow us on YouTube at Noise. Please follow us on anywhere you get your podcast. Click subscribe. Please rate it 5 stars. Even if you didn't think it was very good, please do it anyway. It helps us out. Please get in contact with any bands that should retire. Please feel free that just let us know. The more controversial, the better. I would love to hear it. Just get in touch with any of those. Big thanks to Liquid Death for once again murdering our thirst. Big thanks to Jack for joining us in the midst of another busy week for him as usual. Thank you to everyone listening. The next podcast should be around the September the 10th, and it should feature Kris, although I need to actually tell him that the next podcast is going to be involving September the 10th, and he's expected to be on it. So we'll see how that goes. But that's the plan as it stands anyway. So thank you so much for listening to the Noise Podcast or 45 Minutes of Noise as part of the Noise Podcast Network. I'll get it right eventually. Thank you for everything. We love you.